How I got started writing for video games. Part-time, because I'm a author of novels, manga, and webtoons with multiple series ongoing. So it's hard for me to find the time to actually do a full-time job in narrative design. If you don't know what narrative design is, it's just a fancy way that they call writing in video games. Though I would argue that writing for games is obviously very different than writing for, say, a novel, because you have to think about a lot of different things like narrative branches, how they impact the game, etc., and the players. And if you haven't seen my previous video on writing for games, check it out right here. Now, before we get started, make sure to drop a like, drop a subscribe. Liking the video really helps with the YouTube algorithm. Really appreciate it. And yeah, so how did I get my first video game gig? I feel like everyone in the space has a different journey. I've talked to a lot of different people. There's no one good funnel to get into the video game writing industry. The first thing that everyone should have probably is to be a little bit obsessed with video games, or at least like and play video games, because how can you write for games if you don't like them? So for me, I've been a gamer since I was 8. You know, I streamed on Twitch for a while. Now I don't have time to do it, but I really want to do it again at some point. And ultimately, the first game that I started writing for was back in college. I was really interested in writing for the gaming space. I knew it was a growing area in entertainment. And so I found this indie group called Dark Star Games, which I'm not sure if they're still around. Don't know if they ever launched their game. Maybe they did. If so, then I missed out on a bag potentially. You'll find that with a lot of independent game projects, or just like independent, like big projects in general, they either won't launch for 5 to 10 years, or they just will never launch at all. In 5 to 10 years, I'm gonna have an anime adaptation, so we'll see. Not sure if I want to wait for that. But anyway, I was interested in writing for video games at the time, so I applied. Guys, pro tip, if you want something, just Google it and you go for it. You want that video game internship? Google it, apply for it. You want to make a manga? Go watch Bakuman and go make one. You want to practice writing for video games? That's actually where today's sponsor comes in. Today's sponsor is a company called Dorian, which is a narrative game engine that is focused on building up POC and female writers in the video game space. Anyone can create a visual novel kind of video game on their platform within minutes, which is super cool, without having to code or anything like that. You just have to be a writer. And you can also make money on their platform and play other games. I have one on there. It's an otome game called Blue Spark. If you're interested in it, interested in learning how to write for games, interested in playing some narrative visual novel games, check out Dorian. The link is in my description. Now back to the video. So Dark Star Games accepted me. I didn't really have that many credentials. I had published a few novels, but other than that, I wasn't like a well-known writer at any point. But the writing that I was doing for the game wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't sure if the game was going to take off at any point in time. I was pretty impatient and young and hungry, and I wanted things to happen ASAP Rocky. So ultimately I bounced, but from the experience I learned how scripting for games worked. I learned how narrative branches worked, stuff like that. I had other aspirations, so it made sense for me to quit. I was trying to do manga and webtoons at the time, but it was a really good learning experience. And then fast forward to last year, you know, my manga and webtoon projects were popping off, and I was torn back into the world of video games when a anime gaming startup company that had just received some funding reached out to me. They were actually a big fan of my series, God Game, which was awesome, and they wanted me to do some narrative work for them. Fun fact, later I learned that me and like the CEO and CTO had a mutual friend that went to college with me. It was freaking crazy. Small world. But ultimately what I learned from that is that, like, if you guys want to get into the world of writing for video games, a lot of people that I know in the space have written for other stuff, other mediums, before they wrote for video games. So they wrote novels, they wrote comics, they wrote screenplays. I don't know why you would go from screenplay to games, but who knows? Once you have a portfolio of stuff that you've written for, it becomes a lot easier for a video game company to like look at you and be like, wow, this guy really understands story. Let's bring them on. Because ultimately it's not like rocket science to build world Bible for a video game, right? Or even do narrative branches. It's not rocket science if you know how to already write. So since then I've been, you know, doing otome games for Dorian. I wrote for that game that I mentioned to you guys. And also I just got pulled onto a new anime styled game. It's not necessarily anime, but it's It's styled like that. And this is all part-time work because I'm primarily an Eastern comics writer, but it's super fun to do. And you know, if you're interested in getting into this space, if I were you guys, I would start to write your own projects, build up your portfolio, make yourself a desirable writer asset, and you know, at the same time, just be applying to narrative design internships or jobs. You can start with, you know, smaller jobs and eventually work your way up to the AAA game companies. And once you're there, you pretty much made it, right? You can go from AAA game to anywhere else pretty much in the industry. So I wish you guys all the luck. If you guys like the video, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you reached this point in the video, make sure to drop a comment saying your favorite video games. Anyway, I'll catch you guys next week. Thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.